It's time to refresh your yard during spring backyard days at the Home Depot. Get low prices guaranteed on propane grills starting at $179, like the Next Grill 3-burner gas grill. Or get $50 off a select Weber Spirit grill and bring big flavor to your backyard. Then set the scene with Hampton Bay string lights that bring it all together. Shop spring backyard days for 7 days at the Home Depot, now through May 6th. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Are you on Substack? Because I am, and I'd love to connect with you there. I process things there over Saturdays and Sundays, days off, sometimes weeknights as I'm researching and reading other articles, and it inspires me to write things where I'm going deeper into the behind the scenes of what some of the episodes on A World of Difference are all about. I'd love to connect with you there. So if you are on Substack, find me. You can go to loriadamsbrown.substack.com as a free, or I would prefer a paid subscriber, because then you get access to more of the in-depth things that are exclusively for my paid subscribers. I keep my prices as low as they can be on Substack, as low as they allow. But I do believe in being paid for my work, and I believe you should be paid for yours too. So join me there and let's make a difference together.
Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference.
What if the key to executive presence is not found in boardroom strategy, but in your body? My guest today is presence-based leadership coach, a depth psychology scholar, and a former professional theater artist who spent over a decade performing for tens and thousands of people around the world, including doing partner acrobatics on the halo of the Space Needle, dressed as an alien lizard. Yes, really. Bradley McDevitt is the founder of Carolina Commons Coaching and a coach with the Center for Creative Leadership, which, as many of you know, is an organization I have served on the advisory board of and deeply believe in, both for their passport curriculum that trains executives and managers all around the world, and just for the incredible people that work at the Center for Creative Leadership. He's also an adjunct faculty in depth psychology and creativity at the Pacifica Graduate Institute here in California in Santa Barbara. He brings more than 30 years of experience in professional theater, somatic practice, and leadership development. And his work integrates all of it to help individuals and organizations navigate uncertainty. We got a bit of that now, don't we? To rebuild trust and to lead with clarity, which we all need in these geopolitical shifts we're experiencing. Today, we're talking about why trust is built somatically, meaning in the body, not just cognitively in the brain, and why imposter syndrome might actually be your greatest leadership asset. He talks about what it really means to lead when uncertainty is no longer on the table. And I'm really excited to welcome today Bradley McDevitt to A World of Difference. Hey, Bradley, welcome to A World of Difference. It's great to see you today.
Likewise, Lori, great to be with you.
I'm really excited to talk more with you. We've spoken before, but your take on leadership and your personal lived experience, even your career that's led you to where you are now, is extremely fascinating and unique. And I'm really excited for us to talk a bit about it today. I know that there's this concept around executive presence. There's a lot that's been written and spoken about it, but you have a special take on it. And I want to start off by just asking, what does presence actually mean when it comes to leadership? And why is it actually so rare right now?
Well, thanks for the question. And it's timely. A lot of leadership development organizations are focusing on this idea of executive presence, and it's changed quite a bit in the last even 5-10 years. What used to be described as kind of gravitas, or the presence someone brings with them into a room, how they affect others, is very different in employee-forward organizations. And now we think of presence as really having to do with availability and agency. How can you affect change in the moment, both in yourself, self-regulation, self-awareness, metacognition, And how well are you able to make yourself available to others in the room, to listening, to being comfortable in uncertainty, and really how to recapture your attention and agency. So I think that's where it's headed. And it's important for a number of reasons. Number one, it's the difference between reactivity and responsiveness, right? And I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me for sure, but my clients will say, hindsight is 20/20. I came out of that meeting with 1,000 different responses that I should have said to questions or conflicts. How can I keep those with me in moments of tension? And how can I keep sort of a space around me so that I'm able and available to those options when they come in? That's the real key for me is, especially nowadays when there's such a mental health crisis and a real crisis of meaning and purpose for so many people, that these are life skills, not just skills for executives or for leaders. This is how do I lead myself first and foremost.
Well, I mean, many of us will say, and I've said this so many times, self-leadership is absolutely the hardest part of leadership for me personally. Self-awareness, which is something that the Center for Creative Leadership really has identified as one of the top 4 fundamental skills, and Harvard as well, in the future of work. Self-awareness is a piece that is so often missing here in Silicon Valley among so many leaders that are going so fast. And I think the world is really longing for leaders who understand themselves, can regulate themselves. And so this is where we're grateful for therapists and the Venn diagram of all the people that it takes for us to understand leadership and all these different academics who study this and research it. So I want to get into some of the somatic parts of it, speaking of therapy.
Sure.
Why do you argue that trust, something that we're all working on building, whatever kind of leadership role we have, why do you argue that trust is actually built somatically and not just cognitively or strategically?
Let's break down what somatically means. So soma is Greek for body. And so when we talk about somatics, we're actually talking about felt experiences, and those are emotions, those are feeling states, those are sensations, both, 5 senses, intuition, gut, not just neck up. And that is where trust really lives. I mean, if you think about the process of trusting someone or being trusted, it's not a logical process, right? It's, I feel safe. And what's the important word there? Feel. You have to feel safe to think safe. And so that's just at a very fundamental level. That's why it's built somatically, that when someone walks into a room, your guard doesn't go up. And one of my favorite modern thinkers is Dr. John Vervaeke. He talks a lot about cognitive science and this embodied awareness that goes along with it. And one of the things he points out to people, I love this example. He says, how do you know how far to stand from somebody? It's built in, and we take these somatic cues, these social cues, but how far you stand from someone at a wedding is going to be very different from how far you stand from someone in a funeral. And those aren't logical cues, right? Those are cues that we take from feeling states. And so when someone walks into your boardroom, is the first thing that happens to you is tension and nervousness and palms sweating and a sense of fight or flight, the amygdala taking over? Or is it, oh, thank God they're here. Now we can have a real conversation. I know that I'm going to be listened to. I know that they're not going to make fun of me or think poorly of me if I say something silly or, out of left field. And so it's really this availability, there's that agency and availability thing again, to a felt sense of awareness of this is okay to be. And then the cognitive can flow, right? Because we can't play. Think about when you were a kid. You're not going to play when you don't feel safe. You don't play with bullies. You play with your best friends. So that's really, at a fundamental level, what it comes down to.
I guess, in the workplace, we're not so different than we were on the playground or in the sandbox. I
Not
guess
at
that's
all.
the thing is. But in my experience, and I don't know how many others listening have something similar, I was raised in a religious environment. And also, I would just say in the school environment, which was an international school environment. And I don't think it's atypical in the sense that there were so many messages I was being given to stay in the cognitive and not trust my body and not trust my gut. And so that's been something I've had to work on because of workplace bullying. Speaking of bullies, where my body was telling me somatically not to trust that person, but cognitively, it wasn't catching up. And so that's been some of the hard work that I've had to do to kind of integrate those two things. And it's still a work in progress. But you have a background in theater. And so I think that's really fascinating to think about because on the one hand, I think there are a lot of people acting and pretending there's someone, but our bodies know exactly who they are in the workplace. But how did theater change for you personally, the way you understand leadership and power and some of these dynamics?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to touch on something you just said, which was when someone's playing something false, we sense it, right? And that's true for us as well. A lot of my theories originated from the work of Erving Goffman, who wrote a great book called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. And he uses the metaphor of theater. Yeah. Where
studied him in sociology. He's one of the social theorists.
Yeah. I mean, there's how you present yourself, and to get to my depth psychology roots, the persona, right? The mask, literally, that you wear when you're talking to a police officer who just pulled you over is going to be very different than, your girlfriend or, a teacher, right? So we pay very close attention to the appropriate roles and to those kind of behaviors. But to get back to your question, theater is, when we go to a theater, what do we go to see? We go to see a play, right? And we've really lost touch with the fundamental sense and definition and meaning of that word. I started theater when I was very young. I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I had, I guess, just the gift of being able to memorize something after reading it a couple times. So I would perform Dr. Seuss stories to my family and to my friends. And I'm also just kind of a natural clown in more ways than one. That was one way that I got attention, but I also really loved the world of pretend, of make-believe. That's foreshadowing. I'll get back to that in a second. I eventually became a professional performer. I worked with a company out of Seattle whose work was based in a European style of physical theater from the L'École Jacques Lecoq in Paris. And this is using the body and image as the way into theatrical work, into devised performance, as opposed to sort of script-based or cognitive-based. So you can see already some parallels to the work that I do now. And it was wonderful. I worked with them for over 10 years. We traveled the world, performed for probably tens of thousands of people. The things that I loved about that experience weren't the performing. I mean, performing is wonderful. It's great. But the collaboration, the creative process, the research, the play, in the truest sense of the word, the creation of safety where you could explore and try things and fail and get up, both on a very physical level. I mean, we would do acrobatics and we would bring in trainers we did synchronized bungee jumping with someone who trained us from Cirque du Soleil at one point. I mean, some real dynamic stuff. We dressed up as lizards, alien lizards, and did partner acrobatics on the halo of the Space Needle at one point. Just some incredible stuff, right? But the thing that was really transformative to me was what that kind of training and that kind of lifestyle afforded me just as a person. And it's very much like a spiritual practice in many ways. And it, again, relates to all of these things we were just talking about. This deep self-awareness, an awareness of what was happening internally, both kinesthetically, proprioceptively. I know where my body is in space. I'm able to communicate. I'm aware of how my communication comes across. I have an intimate relationship with the listener. I'm very aware and open to the collaborative process in the moment with people on stage that I'm sharing the stage with or with the audience, right? So there are all of these things happening at once, which for anybody is a lot to track. But when you become available to and you start to develop the skills for managing these, I call it omnidirectional awareness, where you're aware of your interiority and you're aware of what's happening in the space, relationally, environmentally, emotionally. That opens up so much possibility, right? Then that's where play and flow really takes it to another level. I'm just ask any seasoned improviser. That's where they live. And that's, something is very hot right now in the business space, is improvisation for business. So that's a little bit of a snapshot. And then I take those kind of modalities and I apply them to leadership. And the parallels are enormous.
It's so fascinating. And I think that sometimes we get so stuck in the business world in particular of how leadership should look, even when it's changing so rapidly like it is now. And all of these different academic perspectives, all the research and the learnings from other fields are really important right now when we don't know what it's going to look like. It's still in process. Even just the concept of the proprioception that you mentioned, I learned about it years ago from my occupational therapist friends that we were taught there were only 5 senses, but it turns out there's a whole lot more, like the sense of where your body is in the chair or next to the other person in the room, in the meeting, and like you said, where your body is in space. And so understanding that, of course, on a theater stage is one thing, but also understanding how those power dynamics show up in a boardroom. Where are the women sitting? Are they in the chairs on the side? Is it only men around the table? Like even that from a sociological sense or from an occupational therapy understanding, there's some power dynamics being communicated from where your body is in that particular room. How have you sort of seen that when it comes to power and power dynamics from your theater background?
It's pretty stark. And I want to share something that hearing you speak just now made me think of, which is when I'm working at CCL, I'll do table coaching with a group of 5 or 6 leaders. And oftentimes we're role playing. So they've got a practice scenario that they need to work on and some difficult conversation. I actually label the chairs. So everyone will find their spot in the room that is comfort. And often, like you say, the women will sit together and the men will kind of cluster over here. And so unbeknownst to them, I've labeled all of the chairs so that when we get into the roles, they actually have to stand up and move to a new position. And that happens every single time. So when you sit in this chair, you are the role player. When you sit in this chair, you're the leader having the difficult conversation. When you sit in this chair, you're paying attention to these certain things, et cetera, et cetera. And it immediately shifts the room. It immediately breaks people out of the shell because there's that literal sense of I have to move into a new role and the figurative implications as well. What does it feel? Oh, I'm now literally in a different perspective, in a different place, thinking about different things. That sounds easy just to say it, but try it. Try, like right now, sitting in the room, look around the room and find something and pretend you don't know what the word for that is. And instead of saying the name, say, I don't know. So normally we would go, picture, book, cup, coffee, headphones, glasses. Really look at it and go, don't know, don't know, don't know. So put yourself on the back foot of understanding. I mean, again, this is a game, right? So it requires a bit of a suspension of disbelief. The next step, of course, is, and this is where play really gets into it, is making things up, like come up with a new name for glasses. The FAPS. There it is. And now every time you pick that up, it's a plastifap and you put it on your face. And so I say that, I use that example to illustrate how easy it is just at a surface level to put yourself in a different frame of reference. And suddenly all sorts of things can become available to you, and how difficult it is in practice for people to jump out of those tracks, those ruts that they've worn themselves in. This morning, I was actually just talking to a new friend and colleague, a guy named Stephen D'Souza, who's a leadership development coach and fabulous speaker. He's just moved to the UAE, actually, and he's taught in Oxford. He's taught at UNC, all over the world, TED Talks, and he works with people basically leading from the darkness is the name of his book. And it's this metaphor for working from uncertainty, right? Working from this place of don't know. And how exciting it can be, how awful would it be if all the presents that we received were in clear plastic boxes and you knew exactly what was inside every single one, right? I mean, that's a pretty low-hanging fruit metaphor. One that might strike closer to home is how many of us suffer from imposter syndrome. I certainly do. I know many people. I was just talking to a politician in Charlotte who I've been working with, who her goal when we started the conversation was, I want to get rid of imposter syndrome. And I said, can I maybe help reframe that for you? She said, sure. And I said, what's the opposite of imposter syndrome? And she said, certainty. And I said, so what's possible? What new, novel direction is possible from certainty? How do you innovate? How do you come up with new ideas, right? So when you find yourself going to the same chair in the boardroom, when you find yourself looking and like, oh, I'm going to do the same thing, or you're bored, thank goodness, right? Oh, going to another meeting. What simple thing can you do to completely upend the scenario? Put yourself on the edge so that it's exciting. Like sit next to someone you don't know. How horrible would that be? Or sit next to someone you don't like and sit with that for a little while. Or if you're someone who always speaks up in a meeting, sit back, don't say anything. Or vice versa, if you're someone who doesn't, what would it feel like to push yourself out there? So these are really minor adjustments, but they start to push us right up to the edge of discomfort. And again, discomfort is a flag. It's, it's like a red, one of those avalanche flags that shows you where the real treasure is buried or where the live body is. Like, look here. Right? So if you're feeling something grabbing you, some emotion is starting to pull you back, that's a great indicator of, oh, there's something here for me to look at. What is it? Now, this is not to go into trauma response. Trauma response is something different. We're talking about the discomfort. We're not talking about amygdala fight or flight. That's something very different. And thank God for the therapists who can do that work. But there's a gentle crossover here. And that's what we're looking for, is how do we shift from the sort of mundane everyday tracks that we've worn in our lives, where everything feels humdrum and there's no innovation and everything's lifeless, to I'm going to bust the cycle today. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something. Who was it? Was it Eleanor Roosevelt who said, do at least one thing a day that scares you?
Yeah.
How exciting, right? How many of us actually do that? Right? And without prompting yourself, it often doesn't happen because we are creatures who try to avoid that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's reasons we try to avoid it. I mean, honestly, we don't even need sociology and all the in-depth study that I did in my bachelor's degree to understand what we intuitively know, which is that humans gravitate toward people that are like us, whether they went to the same university and that's why we hire them as a recruiting manager, or in the room we sit next to people that look like us, act like us, talk like us. It's just human nature because, especially I think right now, there's so many changes. People have so much change fatigue. Recently, last year, it was Brene Brown at the conference that said people are not okay. And in addition to the geopolitical shifts and all the changes, we're here in the United States of America where it is an attack on our nervous systems just to pull up our social media or the news.
Yeah.
My God, Minneapolis, there's protests happening. High school students are walking out of school. It's just there's so much outside of work. ICE raids, people go into work and you've got return to office, you've got leadership changes, you've got M&As, and there's fast-paced moving environments. So in the middle of it, you have human beings. We weren't made for this. We weren't created for this level of change and information coming at us that's kind of difficult to process. And in the middle of it all, we're having this sort of a meaning crisis. And there's been a lot talked about meaning. I know some companies are really emphasizing meaning this year. There's a whole book about meaning. There's just a lot of talk about this. You speak about modern meaning crisis, though. So I want to know, how do you feel like this shows up right now in a leader's day-to-day?
There's a lot to explore there. Just to touch briefly on the multitude of crises that we're experiencing as a culture right now, it's imperative that people find safety for themselves in the day-to-day. And whether that means unplugging from social media, whether that means finding a quiet place to just breathe. For my introverts out there, where you at? That's so important. Is, the metaphor of the coin bag. The extrovert starts the day with an empty bag of coins, and each exchange they're getting a coin to put in the bag, and they end the day with a bag that's full. For us introverts, I start the day with a full bag of coins, and I have to be very careful, even miserly, about who I give coins to. And so we are not taught to manage that resource. I mean, we talk about the word pay attention. Pay, it's a resource. So what are we paying attention to? We are now encouraged to pay attention to everything. Everything and everyone is salient, is important. And so just cultivating a strong filter for what do I want to pay attention to? What is actually salient? What is, I like to use the metaphor of a mountain. What is getting me closer to my mountain? And what is taking me further away, right? And what is my mountain? And for so many people, they're looking at this mountain range. Oh, today I'm going over there. And nope, today it's this. And it might be fame, or it might be becoming a YouTube influencer, or it might be becoming like I suffer from that as well. As there's so many different directions I want to go, and so many different directions that we're pulled in. How do we step back and find, okay, what is actually salient? What are my values? And I mean values with a capital V, not I value eating or I value friendship, but like, where am I headed? And that's for anyone, whether you're a leader, whether you're an executive, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, or you're a member of ICE, or you're a member of migrant organization. It's so important. And I think one of the reasons why we're so captured right now is that we've lost track of what matters. And so to kind of backtrack a little bit to this idea of making meaning and finding purpose, what is the practice that you have? And I'll actually put this to you, Lori. What is your daily practice that helps you sort of center and remember what's important and why you're doing what you're doing?
Yes. Well, I think because of how wild the world is, and just my own lived experience of some workplace trauma years ago that I had to work through years ago, I instituted more of those practices than I used to have when I was probably in my 20s. And because, I didn't, before I had all the things that have happened to me, good and bad. So, I'm definitely one of those, start off with my cup of coffee, and especially in the cold season that we're living in now, I just really just pay attention to the warmth on my hands. I have a cozy blanket, sit by the fireplace in my living room. I start off my morning really checking in with my body, and doing something meditative. And it doesn't have to be long, because I start my day starts fast and furious, because of the work that I do. But even just I had a therapist years ago that was working with me right after the workplace bullying that I endured, and after I left that work environment. And she said, Lori, even when you're sitting in your office chair, I just want you to take 1 or 2 times a day, just 60 seconds to just sit in your chair. And she called it be. I just want you to be. And it was the hardest thing, one of the hardest things. And I'm not even I'm not ADHD or any of those things, which I have many people in my life that are, and they're wonderful and often very entrepreneurial and very inspiring. I don't struggle with that, but even just sitting in my office chair to be and having no thoughts, I think that was the hard part, to not just overthink, but to really just be open and empty. Because she's like, we just need to take your blood pressure down a couple times a day because you're living in this kind of hypervigilant, go state. And that, long term, that's not good for you. So I've had to work hard on some of the mindfulness practices. Even my kids laugh at me because I had for a while the Waze that I used to drive with. I had a headspace setting on there where it was very somatic kind of prompting. As soon as I would get in the car, it would say, feel your body in the seat. And my kids are like, Mom, please take that off. But I'm like, I need to, because I forget. I get so in my head that I forget to pay attention to myself. But those little things have very much helped me, and they still do serve me.
Yeah. We are a culture, a society of doers. And we forget that we fundamentally are beers. We are beings, not doings. I've borrowed that from so many people. I don't know who I got it from. Probably the coach Nicholas Yanni is someone that I really respect his work. And he shares this story of working with executives. And he says, put yourself into a place and remember a time when you were fully, truly happy and in your body. Like really pull yourself back to that moment. And he gets people there where they're, okay, yeah, I see that. I feel that. And he says, now, what percentage of your day at work do you feel like that? And everyone goes, maybe 5%, maybe 10%. So what would it take, right? And if it's not possible, what does that say? You know, I don't want to keep circling around the political moment, but it definitely wants to be said that when things need to be done, people need to show up to do them, regardless of what that is, because that's a value base. When we see people getting hurt, we feel a call to go protect, to help. And having a scaffolding, a safety net of other people that you can call on to step forward and that you can step behind, to take that breath, to become a beer again and a being and just, right. I've been at the front lines, whatever it means for you in your life, for however many days, weeks, months, years, decades. What do I have to do to step back and to reclaim my attention, my agency, my awareness, a sense of values, a sense of meaning? How do I connect to beauty in my life, right? And the reason that this is so important right now in the corporate world, why so many people are turning to this idea of a new executive presence, is because we need leaders who are capable of doing that, right? It's a very different world. This is why I work with young people. You know, I do theater trainings with young people who come back to me and they say, I did one class with you and this is the most important thing I've ever learned. And now they have a skill to be able to go in and to have that sense of awareness that, something's going on internally that's giving me the heebie-jeebies. I got to step back. Or I'm able to engage with somebody that I might not be able to engage with before and be able to do so mindfully, safely, intelligently, playfully, whatever the situation calls for, right? And of course, adults need that too. But all of this work that I initially started with helping address mental health crises amongst young people, teens in particular. My thought being, clearly these people need help. I love working with kids. This work is so much fun, very expressive, but also teaches some really baseline life skills. Well, it turns out adults need exactly the same thing. And that's what led me to work with leadership, because those are the change makers. Young people are going to be the change makers in a generation. Who are the change makers now? And what are the skills that they need to really make a difference for a maximum number of people and address these systemic issues that we as a culture, especially a Western culture, are struggling with? And that's my passion. That's my life's work.
It's so incredible. And, you know, anxiety among Gen Z, and then we look at what's happening here in the United States, and we're only making it worse right now.
Yes.
It's really heartbreaking. And so I just know that, years ago, I remember somebody saying to me, and I don't remember who it was, this first time I really heard it put this way, that when leaders bring in a non-anxious presence, it changes everything. And that's why the self-awareness piece is so important. And yet, it doesn't mean you're not struggling with anxiety and may even have to work with a therapist and a psychiatrist and have medication for that. That's very normal and understandable and very common.
Yes.
And at the same time, knowing that when you show up, if you're putting your own personal anxiety on your team by micromanaging them or being, if you've ever, and I have worked for a panicky leader, and it just sets the tone for the entire organization, especially if it's the CEO or the CEO and founder. That's just really the whole culture takes on that anxiety. And it really is detrimental to people in the long term. So
Absolutely.
I think what you're doing is so incredible, not just with young people, but also leaders in the workplace. I think I can see how all the connections come together when you talk about it. And it's just incredibly inspiring. I think we need more and more people that understand our humanity, our bodies, how we interact with each other. And you do it in such a beautiful way from your background. I know there's people listening that would like to know more about your work and what you do and how they can find you. So please let us know if people want to follow up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So my company is called Carolina Commons. Carolina, like North Carolina, my spiritual home, and Commons, like the space where we all come together to have dialogue. And that's carolinacommons.org. That's probably the easiest place to find me. And I also have a program called Theater of Self that I take globally to theaters, to boardrooms, to teams where we do exactly this kind of work. We focus on embodied play. We focus on how to reclaim attention, how to reclaim agency, how to work with one another, how to hold multiple truths simultaneously, and solve the hard problems and some of the easy ones across that we're dealing with right now.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I learned so much from you. It's incredibly inspiring. I think we need tools and handles to how to walk through whatever we're walking through right now. And it's often multiple things. So I appreciate you. And everybody reach out to Bradley if you want to learn more, and even bring him as a coach, maybe for your organization, or just to learn from his thought leadership. I'm sure he would appreciate hearing from any of you. Thanks for being on the show today, Bradley. I'm going to have you with our difference makers, who are going to talk a little more about what it looks like to lead effectively when certainty is no longer available. So everybody, if you're not on difference makers, go to patreon.com/difference makers to find us there. Thanks, Bradley.
Hey, you're so welcome. Thank you, Lori.
This conversation with Bradley was so insightful. I learned so much from his experience and the intersection of it all. The idea that presence isn't about performing confidence. It's about genuinely being available to yourself and to others. And that reframe alone is really worth sitting in this era of AI and human-centered leadership conversation we've all been having here at A World of Difference. For everyone who's listening, if you've ever walked out of a meeting with 1,000 things you wish you'd said, raise your hand, me included, or felt your body telling you something your mind hadn't quite caught up with yet, also raising my hand, Bradley's work is for you. You can find Bradley and learn more about Carolina Commons coaching at carolinacommons.org. And if you want to bring this Theater of Self program to your team or your organization, reach out to him directly there. Our Difference Makers on Patreon got an exclusive conversation with Bradley. Check us out there on what it actually looks like to lead effectively when certainty is no longer available. I think we can all relate. Join that community at patreon.com/aworldofdifference. It's a conversation that I myself resonated with, having been one of those people in my career that has been brought into places where crisis was already happening or soon later happened, having worked in straight out of grad school, young in my early 20s, in a global NGO where a role was created for me to open a new site in northern Sumatra. I would sit in Jakarta government offices, the Ministry of Education, drafting with others an MOU or signing those in local regional parts of Indonesia or at the national level, in the midst of working in a province where civil war was happening, Sharia law was in place, then a tsunami and earthquake hit, in a post 9/11 situation where I was leading a team and we had an evacuation to one area and then had to evacuate from another area because of civil unrest. All of these types of situations basically made it to where when I'm in a situation that's uncertain, I can draw from the experiences I really honed, the mistakes I made, the things I learned in my early 20s, even early 30s, to lead teams and understand my team. And you can drop me almost anywhere. I speak 6 languages, but even if it's a language I don't speak, I can very quickly figure out how to move forward, bring clarity out of chaos, and move people in a direction once we get a lay of the land, which for me has become more of almost somebody described me this way, a human LLM. There is so much AI can do to come alongside us, but we really need those of us out there who read the room, who can get a lay of the land, understand the people, the cultures, the players, the power dynamics, and find a way to move forward in the midst of ambiguity and chaos. So, if any of you out there who have lived a similar career experience, either as an expat, as a third culture kid, where I also picked up just a lot of skills growing up in Venezuela with coup attempts and such, and learned a lot just from my own parents about how to navigate ambiguity. I know that even in tech companies right now, people are really facing this need to bring people in who don't have to be handheld. And I definitely my experience, and I know that many of you have probably had similar experiences if you've worked in global NGOs, maybe in government, military, international business, opening new sites in emerging markets such as Indonesia. You might can relate to this with your own expertise. So I'd love to hear from you how you're working through that. And I know Bradley would enjoy a conversation as well, as he's developing even more programs around how to lead in this era. We're all figuring this out together. We're co-creating, but that's as you know, many of you who've listened to this podcast over the last 5 years know that that's the specific superpower I bring to it. Drop me anywhere in any kind of environment. I can figure things out quickly. Don't need to be handheld, and can really start to move and lead a team forward because of the adaptability that life has offered me a chance to learn again and again. And so if you can relate to that and have something to share, please join us in our Patreon community where we go a little bit deeper with our guests. And if this episode moved you, please share it with 5 other people who are navigating ambiguity and trying to find clarity in the midst of all the changes. People really need these conversations right now. And I think this one with Bradley is really great. Leave us a review at aworldoffdifferencepodcast.com/reviews/new or wherever you get your podcast. It takes 2 minutes and it does truly help us reach more leaders around the world. And make sure you are subscribed so you never miss an episode. We have more exciting leaders coming up that are going to share their perspective of how they're making a difference across the world, across industries in this wild ride of AI transformation, leadership development, whether you work in government, in tech, and all kinds of global enterprise, business, biotech, health tech, ed tech, anything where there's innovation and new ideas coming. We love to hear about that. So share with us your experience on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and then join us here at A World of Difference to listen to more guests. If you have guest suggestions, please send them my way. You can find me on LinkedIn at Lori Adams Brown. And make sure, once again, you're subscribed. I don't want you to miss any of our upcoming guests. We have some really exciting ones coming up. And until next time, keep making a difference wherever you are. Okay, difference makers, I know you, and I know when you hear something you really enjoyed and you learned from it, you want to share it. I am like that too, which is why I love to promote guests on this podcast for you to get to hear them yourself. Sometimes they write books, sometimes they write on Substack, sometimes they podcast, sometimes their voice is just every day in the workplace where they live